Hello there, and thanks for tuning in to episode 14 of the Real Talks podcast. This week, I'm delighted to bring you a conversation with Kildare GA legend Dermot Earley, who had an inter-county career that spanned across 3 different decades. As well as recounting some of the good and bad times in the white jersey, Dermot was open and honest about being diagnosed with testicular cancer in his early 20s. He spoke about the experience of growing up in the army and then what it was like to serve in unstable places like Bosnia and Lebanon. We spoke about the passing of his father, Dermot Snr, 7 years ago, and why he felt playing for Kildare on the day of his father's funeral was the best way to honour a true Irish icon. Now the current CEO of the Gaelic Players Association, Dermot spoke about the importance of that work and why he is so passionate about bettering the lives of inter-county players, both on and off the field. My name is Alan O'Mara, and you are listening to episode 14 of the Real Talks podcast.
Paddy Murray kicking it in. They need something big here. Martin Lynch trying to feed it in towards Earley. He's a goal chance. He's got it. Almost 33 minutes are gone. That was the something big that they were looking to try and provide. And once again, it was Martin Lynch feeding a great ally of his, Dermot Earley, steaming through, beating Declan O'Keefe to it. It set the match up beautifully.
Dermot, first of all, as always, thanks a million for your time for doing this. Everyone that we've had on the podcast is all very busy in many different ways, shapes and forms. I think I was going to start the conversation off just sort of reflecting on your own playing career. Something I was looking at over the last couple of days, and I suppose in terms of the longevity of it, the experience you had, and I actually stumbled across the tweet you sent out on the day that you retired, and and you said you enjoyed every moment in the Kildare jersey and you'll miss it. And I suppose the obvious question is, do you miss it, and how are you feeling about it now that you're those couple of years down the line?
Yeah, no, I do miss it. I miss those big days. I miss togging out, going out to play the game, whether that's a league match or big championship match up in Croke Park or anywhere within the country. I do miss that. I mean, I know it can be cliched sometimes, but there is a massive pride in going out and representing your county. And that's what I miss. I miss putting on the jersey and trying to do my best for 70 minutes in that jersey, and that feeling coming off the field that you've given it everything. And, as county players, I think we all know that you're going to have more bad days than good days. And it's the good days, as few and far between for some of us as they were. That's what makes you come back and want to keep going. But I always say that there was a huge pride in coming off the field, winning or losing, knowing that you'd given it everything. And that's probably the one thing that I do miss, that competition. And it's hard to replace that. It's hard to replace it. You can go back and I played with my club for a little bit. And then kind of, I suppose, just the injuries that I picked up along the way, I wasn't as free playing, and I wasn't. I was still enjoying it, but I just couldn't get to the pitch of where I wanted to be. And then other things start. Life takes over, and work, and then other opportunities as well. So I still try and have that competitive. I still have that competitive streak, but it's with myself. And it's not on the football field anymore. It's on a spin bike or it's on a rowing machine, where I'll still try and beat the time I did last week or last year or 3 years ago. But that's where that's where I suppose I get my fix. So yeah, to answer the question, I do miss it. I miss the honour of putting on the jersey.
And you mentioned 2 or 3 times there the good days, and obviously in your earlier playing days you come in at a time where there was plenty of them, or it was quite a vibrant time in terms of Kildare GA. There was the All-Ireland final in 1998 and then the 2 Leinster titles as well. I suppose at that stage when you enter the fold and you're sort of, you're the young gun on the scene, and probably, full of energy, full of life, all those things.
Yeah.
Are those the days that you remember the most fondly?
It's funny, I kind of have, I played from 97 and I retired in early 13. Played my last game with Kildare in 12. And, my career kind of had highs at the start and highs at the end. And then it probably lulled throughout the noughties for a number of factors. Injuries, I was sick for a while. And then, probably post Miko time, we lost a lot of those big leaders on the team, and trying to get back up to that level, it was a struggle. And then I think other counties, namely like the likes of when you look at Armagh and Tyrone, Kerry and Dublin started to come to the fore there. They upped it to a level, and probably we didn't follow suit, even though we thought we were.
Sure.
We weren't training to that level. And then when Kieran McGeeney came back in, I think just he had finished playing in 07 and went straight into management with us, which was a brave call.
Yeah.
But he brought that, that level as a player in 07, brought that in to what it was like, or to what was required as a manager. We got it going again. And that last 5 years, even though we didn't win anything, probably 5 of the most enjoyable years for me, because
been extremely competitive as well. I know it's not a.
Yeah,
I don't mean that as a moral pat on the back, but
you were competing. Yeah, we got to quarterfinals, we got to a semi-final, but we were always thereabouts. And at the start of every year, you were dreaming of winning in All Ireland, and you felt that was really attainable. And that's why I think we competed all the way up, and we didn't lift silverware. So in essence, you could say we failed in that sense, and I think that hurts, Kieran as well, who I've gotten to know quite well over that time, But I tell you, where he brought us and what I learned about myself as well in that period, was probably the most enjoyable. So starting off, I won the silverware in that we won Leinster in 98 and we won it again in 2000. And that was the last piece of silverware nationally. Well, we won a Division 2 in 10, but that was really it. And it's funny, when I came onto the panel in 1997, I got my first championship run out on the 6th of July in 1997 against Meath, in the first of 3 games we played against Meath in the championship. And it was the day before my 19th birthday, and I was still a cadet in the cadet school. And it just by chance, I actually was talking to Mick O'Dwyer yesterday, just for something that was down in Waterville, and I was asking him about David Clifford, and are Kerry going to hold on to him, and hopefully we'll see him in a Kerry jersey soon. And he said the exact same thing. He says, if he's young enough, he's good enough. And I just reminded Miko, and I was very grateful to say, Miko, you gave me my opportunity as a very skinny 18-year-old just before my 19th birthday. So from the start, like we had a great manager, we had a great team back then. We had some fantastic players. And when I look at 98 and I've great, unbelievable memories of it. Winning Leinster was massive because it was the first time Kildare had won it in 42 years. So it was almost like we won an All Ireland that year. But we went on and we beat Kerry in an All Ireland semi-final. And, we had beaten Dublin, Meath and Kerry, the previous 3 All Ireland champions, all in the 1 year. And probably took our eyes a little bit off the ball for the most important game, which was Galway.
Yes.
And Galway had an exceptional team, and maybe we just probably didn't do enough homework on them for the final, and they caught us, and they proved to be a great team. They came back and they contested in All Ireland in 2000 and then won another one in 2001. So it was disappointing, but a brilliant year, and the following year there was no back door, and the following year we played Offaly in the first round, and I think we probably were a stronger team, but just we were poor that day, and Offaly deserved to beat us. So we had to wait again for the following year, and
no second chances,
you know. And we had some great battles against Offaly and Leinster, and then we had the Dubs in Croke Park in the Leinster final, and we drew the first day, and then the second day, I think they were giving us a masterclass in how to play football, and we're 6 points up at half time, and we were written off, and we got 2 goals within 2 minutes at the start of the game and won by 5, you know. But it was Galway who caught us again on a wet day in Croke Park when we were actually in the driving seat. And after that, then we lost a lot of our leaders from that team. Niall Buckley, Martin Lynch went away to the States, I think, and just a few normal retirements. Sure. And then, you know, I suppose the next big occasion for us was the Leinster final in 2002, and again it was the opposite of what happened 2 years previous, where they got 2 goals in 2 minutes and killed us off. But that's sport. It swings and roundabouts, you know. So, but I suppose the thing was that, you know, at the start of my career I thought, yeah, this is the way it's going to be.
That's what I was just going to ask you on that point around, particularly when you're that younger age and you're probably, you know, a bit naive in some sense. You probably have the automatic presumption that we're going to be doing this every year. This is the way it's going to be. And I suppose from the position that you're in now, say obviously with the sense of perspective that you have reflecting back, is there any sense of regret around that? I suppose the lull, as you call it, in between. Not asking you sort of at the whys of it, but is just around that sort of, you know, when you look back at it as a whole, is there a sense of regret with that, or is it just?
Yeah, there is. Obviously, there's a regret that we didn't win the All-Ireland. Like, that's, you know, I think it just came so quickly for me. You know, in my first 2 years we were there, you know, you were in that stage where, or you were in that arena that you dreamed of as a young fella, that you'd been to every single year, wondering, just will I ever get there? And you get there, but you don't win, and you say, right, I want to get back again. But for some reason, we just didn't. And you think at 19 or 20, you have your whole career ahead of you, and that you will get back, but we never did. And that's that was probably hard to take. So if I was to look back on it now, you have to seize that opportunity when you're there, because it, you know, and that's a cliche again, but it's so true that you have to, when you have that opportunity, to make sure that you seize it. Whenever
I'm doing any of these interviews, I end up on about the 12th page of Google searches. So if anyone has any secrets, you normally stumble across them. It's the thing that happened to you, and I don't know how comfortable you are talking about it. And you've mentioned there that sort of that single-minded drive, going after all our finals and in there, but does something come along to yourself that puts that into check with you?
Yeah, like 2002 certainly did check it. I was diagnosed at the very beginning of 2002 with testicular cancer, which I think I was 23 years of age. It was a massive shock. And I was very lucky in the sense that I got it early, and I had an operation very quickly to remove the cancer, and I went through a period then of radiotherapy. So that all happened between February and May of 2002.
And it just comes out of nowhere.
It came out of nowhere. I was watching a programme. I was in college down in Galway. I was watching a programme on TV about, you know, checking yourself. Yeah. And I ended up checking myself. Right. And felt something that wasn't right, just a lump. And I said, that shouldn't be there. And ended up going to see a doctor on the Friday, who was actually the Galway team doctor for a number of years, a lovely man. And he just said, look, I'll be straight up. I think that's cancerous. We'll do an ultrasound. This was on a Friday. We did the ultrasound, and he says, I'm going to operate on Monday. Right. Kildare were playing Sligo in the league in Newbridge. I was meant to play, and this is
on the Sunday.
Yeah. One of them, I said, well, can I play the match on Sunday? And he said, it's probably not. You know, probably wise you don't. You know. So I had to go back and just explain to Miko what happened, and then went and got the operation on the Monday. Got out of hospital on the Wednesday, and then began just that process of kind of getting my head around it, because it happened so quickly, and all these questions about, am I going to be okay down there? Will I be able to have kids?
Of course.
Am I going to need chemotherapy? Am I going to be able to play football? All these things start going through your head. And I suppose the biggest supports that I had was I had great support in the army at the time, but my family as well.
Sure.
My mum and dad and all my brothers and sisters, my friends, they were just very supportive, and my teammates as well. So they let me off, just go get yourself right. And, it was kind of a little bit of probably a time of discovery for myself. Just found a lot about myself. That just to suggest that you can encounter setbacks, but anything like that can make you stronger. And can improve you.
Yeah, because on the back, I suppose, having mentioned, say, the 98 final in 2000, I said something, as a young man, you probably just naturally start feeling a bit invincible because things are going well and things are going good. And you mentioned that sense of discovery there, or being faced by adversity, or whatever you want to call it. But is that something that helped you learn a lot? It obviously was.
Yeah, and I think sometimes I would have even in your early days, I went straight from school. I joined the army as a cadet straight away. I probably always kind of had a little bit of self-doubt in myself.
Right.
Football almost came easy, but other areas of my life kind of, you might be always, I probably was a bit shy and timid even, and I think, it took probably that incident to say, to learn an awful lot about myself, that, I'm quite a strong person here in this sense, and no matter what's kind of thrown at me, I'll get through it, and I'll move on. And, I think that lesson that I learned in 2002, helped me a lot in later life, in other, certainly sporting injuries that I had, but just life in general as well. What I am really proud of, looking back in 2002, is, I went off and I did my own thing. I used to drive myself up to the Mater to get my radiotherapy. I drove myself home. I didn't need, even though the support was there, and it was there whenever I needed to have the chat and whatever, but I kind of just said, right, I'm going to do this.
In terms of independence.
Yeah, and I went off and I did it myself. Right. And once the radiotherapy was complete, it was about a month of going up and down every day to the Mater for an hour every day. It was right on my stomach, right on the lymph glands, because that's where the cancer would move next, if it had spread. So it did make you a bit sick, but I was able to handle that. And one of the proudest things about that year is that, in my own time, I went back training. So I went back training in around May. And I remember going for a run in the Phoenix Park after not having done anything for about
just a
3
gallop
months.
on your own.
Just a gallop on my own. And after, I used to do a 3 mile run quite a lot in there, and just again on the time. And you'd be always on the clock to see where you got. And after a mile, I had to stop on this one. I had to stop and walk back.
What was that like for you?
That was tough. That was a tough, because I realised where I was physically and where I was now. I needed to work really hard. But I think, I went back in and I started training at my own pace, doing a little bit of work on my own. And then I think I played my first game about a month later against Kerry in a challenge match down in Abbeyfield. And, that was the start of it. We got to a Leinster final that year. We were beaten by Kerry in the qualifiers down in Thurles. And I got nominated for an All-Star later on that year. So I just, that was a huge achievement.
Absolutely.
And I actually have that nominee and I almost have, that to me
means that a little bit more.
Almost to, another All-Star or whatever that I have beside it. So
no, I think you've made a number of really important points there, and obviously just thanks for sharing that, because I know that's something that's obviously a big moment in your life, and adversity and having to overcome different things, but you've captured a number of things really, really well there. So just thank you for that.
No problem.
And I suppose you also, in the middle of all that, referenced the injury piece. Again, it's something that's crept up in different episodes over the course of this series. I know Michael Fennelly talked about it quite a lot.
Yeah.
And you mentioned sort of that period of time helping you deal with that. And I suppose earlier on you referenced the rejuvenation that came under Kieran when he came along. But also that was at a time where your body probably was at a different stage. And obviously it was a good time for Kildare in terms of getting the energy back in and competing. But was there frustrations within there for you as well in terms of that, in terms of those injuries?
Well, to be honest, I started getting the injuries in 2003, right? And it was again, I've never pulled a muscle in my life, never pulled a hamstring or anything like that, but I always seem to be breaking bones,
right?
And it got to the point where I was breaking metatarsals, and then I'd break it again, and so I missed all of 2003 because playing for the college in the Sigerson game, later in late 02 playing a club game, I broke a metatarsal, and then I broke it again early in 03. And that year had its own journey. I mean, I can remember the David Beckham and
that was the World Cup
stuff,
wasn't it?
That was the World Cup and all that, and he had broken his metatarsal. John Osborne was chairman of Kildare Supporters Club at the time, and between himself and Pádraig Nolan, they were kind of saying, right, we need to get you fixed here. So they actually sent me over to Manchester United, over to Carrington,
right,
to get my scans looked at because it wasn't healing. So I ended up going over in around March of 2003, going over to Carrington.
You're in the training complex?
In the training complex. I'm meeting the team doctor and the team physio.
How did that come about, or how did that happen?
Just through a relationship that Michael Osborne had with Alex Ferguson. Again, I don't know the ins and outs. I probably didn't even think about it. And I just wanted to get up and going over there.
Sure.
So I ended up going over and meeting their team doctor and their physio, and I'm sitting on a bench, and next second in walks Diego Forlan after training to get his ankle strapped, and I'm looking at him and he's looking at me.
What's going through your head when that's happening?
It's just how surreal this was, and then right at the end of that, Queiroz comes in, who was the assistant coach, manager, and has a discussion in front of me about Rio Ferdinand's fitness and whether or not he's going to be able to play Champions League on Wednesday night. And the decision was, no, he's not going to play Champions League, but he'll be okay for the Premier League on the following Saturday. And when I was home on the Wednesday, back in Galway in college, sitting down watching the Champions League, someone said, is Rio Ferdinand playing? And I said, no, he's not playing tonight, but he'll be okay for the game on Saturday. So just little things like that. But to be honest, the funny thing was that the advice I got over there actually didn't really help at all.
Right.
I did what they told me to do. I went into a kind of a specially made boot. I had this ultrasound device that I had to put on it every day that was to increase the healing. And after 3 months, when we got the scan, I could see I was no expert now, but I could see that the break hadn't healed. So they took out the screw that was in there and put in another one. So it was a waste of time, but it was a brilliant experience. But the injuries, so I missed all of three, and again I had injuries. I kept breaking with his fingers, collarbones. I was just really unlucky with injuries, and that always kind of, I think that stopped me developing even more so as a footballer throughout the noughties, because it was stop-start.
Sure.
So I'd miss it.
Hard to get momentum
It
going.
was hard to get momentum. And then when the momentum that I really got was when Kieran came in, I got 2 years of proper full training without an injury. And I think at that stage, personally, I felt I would have played the best football of my life, and probably I enjoyed it the most. And then right up to getting injured again and injuring my knee in 10, which had its own journey as well. So like, I think probably the noughties was frustrating, but again, with the arrival of Kieran and the knowledge he brought and the whole approach with the sports science, the conditioning, that opened up my eyes again, and I bought really into it, and our team bought into it, and we had great camaraderie. You know, we're a bunch of friends trying to win in Ireland, which was really special, and we're still great friends, even though a lot of that team have moved on. We're still brilliant friends, and under that period, then, you know, we got that run. My body felt good. I was just unlucky again to hurt my knee, and that's the way it goes. That's sport, though, you know.
Sure.
And right up until I retired, you know, everyone would say, ask any sportsman, you know, how would you like to retire? And they'd say, I'd like to retire after kicking the winning score in the All-Ireland and walk to the adoration of the crowd and that. And it doesn't happen
the
that way.
romantic stuff.
That's the romantic stuff. And, you know, you might see, okay, maybe Brian O'Driscoll got to do that. Got to wave goodbye.
Because Paulie was like the year later was carried off.
Was carried off, and that's the reality of it. And the reality for me was that was the way my injury finished my career. And between 10, when I hurt my knee, and then I actually tried to play through it the whole year, right up until it just collapsed. You know, it was really a back injury. And the funny thing was, I was 34 at the time, in the gym doing stuff I knew I shouldn't be doing, but I felt that I needed to do it to try and compete with the younger guys that were coming up, even though...
As in you were pushing too hard?
I was probably pushing or doing the wrong exercises, or just because one of the young lads at 23 was squatting 100 kgs, I should be doing that at 30. And that's how I hurt my back in the end.
Right.
But yeah, you know, it's amazing where you think you're older, you can do quite stupid things.
Like, and just even on that note, Dermot, in terms of, I suppose, when you have to retire, like, as you said yourself there, like, you didn't have a choice. It was more or less, that was it. I suppose, again, if you wrestle the two, we'd all love to walk off waving at the crowd, you know, and everyone clapping you. But I suppose, with the decision more or less being taken out of your hands, like, I'm a little bit curious, does that make it harder or easier to, I suppose, accept that spell of life is over? Do you get me?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I can only answer it the one way, because that's the one way I know. It was harder. It was
harder.
Well, it was hard.
Yeah,
because I don't know what it's like the other way.
Yeah.
I can only imagine how
you
great
just got your experience of it.
My experience is the injury, and but you know what? Throughout my whole life, I always kind of, anytime I had an injury, I never dwelled on the injury. I never dwelled on, you know, I can't believe this has happened. I used to always say, right, grand, look, just tell me what's wrong with me. What do I do? What do I need to do to fix it? And that's the same even way I approached when I finished with my back. I just said, look, right, grand, let's get this sorted, and then I'll try and fix it. And I got back and I played with the club later on that year. But the transition from playing to not playing is a tough one. And I suppose, you know, you have to have something in your life that can kind of take you away.
Absolutely.
From that and to refocus yourself. And for me, the refocus was, I was going to Lebanon with the Irish Army in November, and the pre-training for that started as soon as my back was right, which started in the middle of the summer. So that was a focus for me. Okay. And I'm going out here now.
So you had a very tangible target.
Exactly.
And
it helped for me in the adjustment, because I had something to focus on, which was big, which was going out, out to Lebanon. And again, you were going out in a leadership role where you had responsibility for troops, which really kind of, you know, it focuses you as well. I'm gonna
leave the football stuff behind now, and I do want to explore the army side of your life. But just before I leave that football behind, in terms of the injuries and that, I think it's probably an important question to ask. And is there any long-term effects of those injuries that you had in terms of pushing your body the way you do? Like, are you inhibited through, I suppose, the training, or trying to push yourself, be it right or wrong, as you said? But is there any stuff that, you know, that reminds you on a daily or weekly basis?
Oh,
that,
yeah.
You know, I can be
But
very
that's
sincere
it.
about
Every
it.
day,
Yeah.
every day.
Is it?
You know, I do have legacy issues. I have to watch my back, and I know every now and then it can hurt. And my knee will preclude me from, I can run if I want to, but I'm going to be sore for a week because of it. So that's why I spin and I go on the
Sure.
on
No,
the
I picked that up a little bit. And that's why I was
yeah.
asking. I think the point that I was thinking when I asked that question was, I suppose when we're all playing, we all get caught up in it, and it's just okay. What's wrong with me? I need to get back here for the next game. But we probably all shelter ourselves into that short term thinking, which again we understand. But that's why I just felt it was important to ask that question as well.
Well, if I was to go back now, and certainly on the back, like my back is actually it's good. It's and I know when it's sore, I know what to do.
Yeah.
To get it right again. The knee is a different story, and if like bones heal, and all my bones have healed, and they heal stronger than probably the way they were before. But the knee is different, and everything kind of goes through it, and you feel it in every single, movement or most movements in life, and even leisurely taking a stroll, in the Curragh or playing around the golf or whatever, I'll always feel it. If I was to change one thing, when I hurt my knee originally in 10, I kept going. I kept going because I knew the end was near. I was 31, and I knew the team we were capable of doing something, and I kept going. And every game I played in that championship, I did more damage, and I came off with 10 minutes to go in all of them.
Right.
In all of them, just because we had won the game. Let's say wait for the next one. And in the quarterfinal, then in the first 3 minutes, on my own, in the middle of Crow Park,
That was it.
That was it. It just collapsed on me, and the damage I did the 6 months previous to that, and nobody put any pressure on me. It was my own.
Sure.
It was myself putting pressure on myself because I still wanted to play, and then I had a notion. I had my own kind of dream that. This is kind of the year that I think we're going to do it. We're going to go there, and then I can retire. I can go on my own. It didn't happen that way at all. If there was one regret, I probably should have stopped then.
Got it
checked, got it operated on. As a result, I missed all of 11 anyway. Tried to get back in 12, and at that stage, I wasn't the player I was.
Okay. I said no. I conscious spoke ins and out of football there, and you directly referenced the army there, and obviously it has been a huge part of your life. I suppose starting at the start, what drew you towards that, I suppose, and how has that been as experience or life experience for you? Yeah, well, what drew me towards the army, one, growing up in Newbridge, you're on the edge of the Curragh there, which is the biggest army barracks and base we have in the country, and plus the fact that my dad was in it, and I was in and out from a very young age, in and out of the Curragh the whole time, watching what was going on, asking him what he was doing, what you do today, constantly curious about it, and when he'd tell you I was in the Glen of Amal, doing an exercise, or I was in Royal Hospital Kilmainham attending a ceremony, or I'm training to go overseas. I just was fascinated by it. Or I was driving a tank. All these things just, really fascinated me. So from an early age, I knew. And plus, I had a great experience as a young person when my dad was based in New York for 4 years. So from 9 to 13, we lived out there, and that was through the army. And I knew that chance of travelling and seeing the world was a great possibility. So I said, right, that's what I want, and applied for the cadets, and did my leaving cert, and in June of '96, and joined it. Was lucky enough to get in, and started my cadet training on the 1st of October in 1996. So went straight from school, it was a tough 2 years. As I said, I probably was a shy, quiet person, and what I think that training does is it does bring you out of your shell, and it gives you responsibility straight away.
and you have to make sure that you can do your best, that you deal with that responsibility in the best way possible when you have it. So I learned a huge amount about teamwork. I learned about camaraderie. I learned about leadership, and it was tough. There was times when it was really tough, and you learn a lot about yourself as well in that sense. And I think that set me up a little bit further on for the toughness that I would have got through injuries and that. It teaches you to be resilient, which are qualities that a lot of intercounty players have. That resilience. They keep coming back. But I really enjoyed it. I got commissioned in July of 1998 and was actually stationed up in McKee Barracks here, so not too far from Kildare. I was lucky because back then usually they sent you as far away from your home as possible for the first couple of years.
Trying to get you out of your comfort zone.
And that's it, So there was always a chance of Donegal or Cork or somewhere, that was as far away from or Monaghan or wherever, or Cavan. There was plenty, and all I wanted to do probably at that stage was having got into the Kildare team was trying to. So I was lucky enough I was able to get the train home from McKee for training, and which was grand. So I was lucky in that sense. Yeah.
Heading into, I suppose, that army environment, I'm guessing that the physical aspect of it obviously probably suited you in terms of that driven mentality that's come across already. But I suppose as a young man in that environment, in terms of be it mental, emotional or social environment, what is that like just I suppose, because during that age, everyone's going through a variation of a transition anyway. You're either out at home, you're going to college, you're going to workplace, you're going abroad. And I suppose just in terms of that army environment, trying to get probably a little bit better understanding of that. What was that like as a culture, as a young man, I suppose, to grow up in?
Yeah, no, it was difficult initially because again I was quite a shy young fella, and even my own classmates, who I'm still excellent friends with and will always be, often said I didn't speak for the first 6 weeks in there, but I think what you do is you learn about different people in that sense, and you see when you're under pressure, and they put you under pressure because you're going to be under pressure in your career, and they'll purposely put you under pressure to see how you respond. And I think when you see people under pressure, you see the true person that they are, and what comes out. And I think I was lucky with the people that I was in with my classmates, and there was a culture of helping each other. So some might be good at one thing, and another might be not good at that. Whether that's ironing your
with a sense of giving each other a dig out,
or you're polishing your shoes, or if your rifle shooting wasn't up to standard, or if you're marching, everybody would help each other out.
I think that's a great point. You mentioned that from a young age, recognising the opportunities to travel or to see different parts of the world. Where has your army experience brought you to in terms of places? Is there anything that stick out?
Well, my first trip overseas, I went overseas twice. That was it.
And was that through football commitments as well?
Absolutely, yeah. And my first trip was in 2004. I went to Bosnia, and obviously that was coming towards the end of the Bosnian conflict. Well, it was over, and obviously we had taken over.
In the peacekeeping
in a peacekeeping role. It was the first European mission, a combined European mission. It was the stabilization force there, run by the Americans. So it was now Europe that were taking over it, and it was the first, I suppose, combined mission in that sense that Ireland were involved in Bosnia. So we were. Again, looking forward to it. I worked in a multinational, environment, so you were working with loads of different nationalities. And the one thing I suppose that I took from it was that, even though our defence forces are small defence forces compared to the size of others and the equipment that they have, but we're very capable. And I also found that other nationalities used to gravitate towards you or your colleagues looking for kind of
Why do you think that
advice. I think it's twofold. I think because I think it's our nature that people would come to us because, we seem to be inviting. And I think that's why we're so good at peacekeeping, because we reassure, I suppose, the local population we're not there to do harm, we're there to keep the peace. And other colleagues within other defence forces, I think, would see that and they would gravitate towards us. And the second point was that we were obviously English speaking.
Yeah.
And the whole mission was in English. So they would come to you for advice on wording and things like that. And I used to always say, well, look, actually English is my second language. I'm an Irish, I'm an Irishman, and Irish is my first language, even though I'm embarrassed to say I don't have much Irish at all. But so I think that's why they came to you.
Okay.
But I think they liked spending time in our company. They liked the way we are, the way we engage with each other. We like to have fun. We like to socialise as well, and I think that's something that they also found comfort in when you're overseas. But it was a great experience, and I came home then, and obviously because
how long did you say you were out?
6 months.
6 months.
6 months.
So it's quite a decent chunk
it
of
is.
time.
It's you think, and then there's a prep time as well.
Yeah.
There's a pre-deployment training which can take up to 3 or 4 months as well. So it's quite a long time.
And going from that space of maybe being, as you said, a shy cadet to being in a place like Bosnia, obviously, like that's so far out of that comfort zone again. And what's the what was the individual experience like out there as you?
It's funny again. For me, I think I grew up an awful lot there as well. I worked in what they call the Tactical Operations Centre. So that was the operations room as such. It was manned 24/7, and you ended up doing shift work in there. And it was my job to collate all the information that was happening all around our area of responsibility, what the various different units were doing on a day-to-day basis, and then compile. If you were on at night time, you were compiling a brief for the morning, so you were briefing the general on what was going on for the last 12 hours and for the next 12 hours. If you were there for the evening shift, you were compiling the daily report and sending that up to the headquarters. But you were the point of contact for everybody. So everything fed into you. So you were the first on, and it was a very important role.
Sure.
And I think, just again, developing a confidence to be able to brief and even advise at certain times as to how you would do things. I think for me it was another
massive learning experience.
And again, and in my section there was no other Irish, so I had an Austrian, I had a Portuguese, a Finnish.
That must have really added to the experience, did it?
Which did,
Yeah.
and even getting to know all the different cultures and how they do things, and we had themed then culture events as well that just make the 6 months go that little bit quicker. So you get to experience different cultures, and it's funny. I got an email not too long ago from the Austrian major who was in charge there. Which is 12 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's nice for that. But at the same time, when I was out there, one of the things you learn in the army is it's physical fitness. It's very important, and they encourage it because you have to be physically fit to be a soldier, and in the event that in a conflict to do your job. So I would have trained the whole time as much as possible, with always in mind of coming home and getting back on the Kildare jersey and going out and playing for my county. So that was always in the background as well. So every day you got into a routine and you did as much training as you possibly could as well.
And also with the army, I think it's only right that I do bring up your father in that capacity, because he's obviously someone who's a huge role model to yourself, but he's also quite an iconic figure in terms of leadership from GA and the army in Ireland. And I suppose, what was it like to follow in his footsteps and also have someone like that as a role model in your life?
Yeah, look, I suppose from an early age, I kind of always knew that he was someone special. From whether that was travelling down to Roscommon and watching him play in Roscommon, and the reaction that he would get from people that were in his company, and the way he carried himself, and the way he had time for everybody. And I think, people don't remember sometimes what you said or how you said it, but it's how they make you feel that they remember. And I think that was his real quality, that he made people feel good about themselves, whether that was just having a chat, or a handshake, or looking at him in the eye, a strong connection. And I think that quality is what made him, I suppose, do so well in the Defence Force, because the troops could relate to him, and he was always able to relate to them as well. So he was a real man's, general, if you want to call it that. But having him, I suppose, as a father, but also as a role model as well. I was blessed in that sense. I was very lucky. You could always ask for that little bit of advice, the whole way up. And even in my army career, having him there, because he had gone through it, even on the football side of things, because he'd gone through it as well.
Trying to balance them and do the both. Yeah.
But, even advice on football related things, like just that little couple of things that he'd always pass on to you. So I had that from his experience on the football side of it, but I also had it from his experience in the army side of it. But he never used, he never kind of made the phone call just to say, get him off that, or get him. And it's funny, there was back in 2006, I was actually captain of Kildare, and I was going into Portlaoise prison as the prison duty officer, and that in that meant that you were in there for 3 days on, 3 days off, and this was in April, coming up to business start really of the championship, and I was having difficulty getting out of it, and all he had to do was make a phone call, but he wouldn't do it. He made me go through, and that was a lesson as well, I learned for me. So look, the one thing I suppose now, it's 7 years since he's passed on, it's that little bits of advice that I'd miss, because he always set you in the right direction. Never told you what to do, but he gave you that little bit of a steer, as to say, and you made your own decision, but it was always
gentle guiding light.
It was always spot on. And that's probably one of the hardest things. But
sure. No, and your reference is passing there, and look, for anyone that's listened that maybe isn't overly familiar, his passing obviously came way too soon. He was 62 years of age. I know I'd imagine it's a difficult thing for yourself to recall and think about. You went out and played the day of his funeral. I hope you don't mind me bringing it up or asking about it, but that must have been, I suppose, just the reason I do bring it up in terms of people's mental health and well-being. Bereavement is something that we all have to deal with at times. None of us want it, but it enters our lives at times when we don't see it coming. I suppose, how difficult was that initial spell? And especially, like, you obviously go out and make the decision to play for Kildare against Antrim in the qualifiers. It must have been a very topsy-turvy time for yourself and your family as well, obviously.
It was, and we knew he was sick, and he had gone into St. Bridget's Hospice there at the Curragh, which is palliative care really, and it's only a matter of time when you go in there, unfortunately. And we had brought him out for Father's Day, brought him home to have him at home, which was the Sunday before. We were playing Antrim on the Saturday in Newbridge, and he just took a turn that day and passed away then on the Wednesday. And even what I kind of used the football as a little bit of an escape. Sure. And I ended up I actually trained on Tuesday night. I just went in to Newbridge and trained with the lads on Tuesday, and then went straight back to the hospice. And then I suppose the talk was, are you going to play this game on Saturday? And kind of had a good long think about it. And I said, what's the best way to kind of honour him? And like, would he want me to, you know, be lying around, or would he want me to go out and, you know, represent my county the best that I possibly could, which is what he always said. You know, one of his favourite quotes was, "He never jumped so high, he never kicked so well, or he never ran so fast," was when he was wearing a Roscommon jersey, you know, and kind of always stayed to me, and you know, the importance of that
representation.
And I said, look, the best way to honour him, and some people mightn't agree with that. Some people should have felt
it's your decision.
It's your decision. It was a personal thing, and you know, even for 2 hours, then I was kind of lost in, you know, the ball.
And were you able to get lost?
I was, and you know, that people might say that's a bit, you know, strange as well.
No, not at all.
But that for 2 hours, I was able to not think about anything, but the actual the ball, and the team and winning. And don't get me wrong, I was well aware, because there was a very unique atmosphere in Newbridge that evening, and a lot of my friends that were there would have commented on it afterwards and said it was a really, you know, there was almost an energy in the air. There was a huge crowd there, and there was a huge crowd for his funeral, so a lot of them had stayed on for the game. But no, that was my best. That was the way I felt that I could honour him, and it was also the way I felt of dealing with the bereavement as well, and that helped me. And we didn't win it. We drew with them. We went up to Antrim the following week, and we won. And that actually set off a kind of a journey that summer in the qualifiers, which ended up with Kildare being in Ireland semi-final. So it was a between everything that happened that year, it was a difficult year.
I can only imagine, you know.
But certainly it was a year that I suppose added to the development of me as well as a person as well.
I think, like, there's no doubt that his legacy lives on in many different ways, shapes and forms. I know there's the leadership program involved, the GA, several different things. And look, his legacy also lives on through you in a certain way as well. And that's obviously something that does, I think it comes across as you speak there, it does linger with you at times, and you do think about it. I suppose it just brings, in terms of that leadership aspect, which brings you on to, I suppose, the current role where you are now. And I suppose first and foremost, making that decision to transition, take a leave of absence from the army and come in as the CEO of Gaelic Players Association. Where was the motivation to do that, or where did that come from for you?
When I came home from Lebanon, first of all, in 13 or 14, I came home again. You know, you were still in that transition, and I remember chatting to Desi Farrell, and you know, saying, look, I suppose, you know, you're away. You can't play, so what's the next best thing to be involved in? And that's, I suppose, in with the Gaelic players, you know, just trying to understand, I suppose, the work that the GPA were doing, and then seeing the actual tangible benefits of it, you know, in players' lives as well. I got involved as the president, and then the opportunity arose when Desi stepped down. And you know, if you had asked me 4 years ago, would I be able to do this job? I probably said no, absolutely not. And
why would you have said no?
I just felt it was probably too big of a job, too important of a job. That, you know, there's obviously someone far more capable than me that would be able to do that. But yet, I think when you know, again, one of the things I suppose about developing yourself is putting yourself in somewhere where you're not comfortable, and learning about yourself. And I thought a lot about that, and I went for it. And thankfully, I was offered the opportunity. And again, you know, a big call about, you know, moving from the Defence Forces as well. And I was very grateful that the Defence Forces gave me the opportunity to take a leave of absence and to take up this job. So yeah, I haven't regretted any of it. If there was things that I would do differently over the last 6 months, 7 months now, 8 months actually.
You don't find them ones going.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely, I would. And there's an awful lot that I do differently, but it's about a learning process. And when you're in a position where you're representing your inter-county players, and that's not just in one particular county, you're representing them 67 squads. I think that's a huge honour. And I think coming from where I know what it takes, I suppose, to be an inter-county player, and the challenges that's faced on a daily basis by them, whether that's in their own jobs, in their work life, college, everything, it is still a challenge. I think being in a position where I understand that, I think that I suppose I'm able to direct the areas that we can keep helping our inter-county players to be, as they say, to be the best on the field. Yeah. And that's, but also making sure that they have something to thrive on off it.
I suppose you're 8 months into the role now, and you've obviously had the opportunity probably to meet more players than ever before, and engage with loads of different stakeholders involved in, I suppose, the whole thing that goes on around our games. Has that given you, I suppose, a greater appreciation of your own playing career, first and foremost, when you're having those conversations, but also an even deeper respect for what we have as an organisation and as a playing body? Yeah,
I think you can relate to the guys a lot easier because you've been there, you've worn the jersey, you've had the same challenges that they've had. What I would say is that even from when I finished to where the game is now, I think the level of preparation, the level of demand, whether that's time, energy, everything has increased again. And it's our job to ensure that the players are not wanting for anything in that space. To make sure that on the welfare side of it, that that they get what they are entitled to, and they get what they require, and whether that's around anti-doping, education, training, or, ensuring that we've proper concussion protocols, ensuring that they get the right levels of nutrition, of mileage, of gear, of playing gear, to be the best that they can be. And I think that's something that's just on the representation side of things that we're working very hard on, and we will continue to work very hard on over the next number of years on that. But also the other side of it is, that's one area. The other side of it is also the development that we talked about. And every player is different, every person is different. I think in the past, players might have just gotten jobs to suit their inter-county careers because they allowed them time
and let them play.
And they mightn't have that job satisfaction, that fulfillment out of it. I think we have to separate what happens out on the field to what happens in your own personal life, and you're trying to get the players to go on a journey where they'll discover themselves what they want to do, because your playing career can stop at any stage. It can be cut short. And
even if it runs for the entire length it can, it's still a short window in your life.
You're still, and you still have your whole life. So it's very important that you find something that you love, and that you're passionate about. Almost bringing that same passion to your own personal life as you do to that inter-county hurling or football. And we have to ensure that our players, that we can provide that for our players, and that comes in a number of different guises, whether that's education, whether it's personal development coaching, whether it's business financial advice. That's very important. We do that, but also I think we have to be there for the other challenges that come up with playing sports at a very high level, and that's pressure as well. And some people deal with pressure an awful lot different. But we have to ensure that if a player is struggling in any capacity, that we're there for them, and we're there to help them through it and get out the other side. And that's very important, and that's a very important factor of what we do here as well. over the last year, I think we've had a lot more engagement in the number of players that are coming to us, because they realise the importance of, you have an athletic identity over here on this side, but you also have your own personal identity, and you shouldn't be defined of what you do on a football field or a hurling field. That's one part of it, but there's so much other things, and you find that, what I love is meeting a new player that possibly I hadn't met, and then he tell me about his interests, about where he wants to go, and you think, wow, there's something totally untold there. Nobody else knows, but this person has such ambition, has such ideas, has such energy, and I think we have to be there to ensure that energy, that passion gets developed and is channeled into something that they love doing away. And a lot of them come knowing exactly what they want to do, and that's fine.
That's great.
That's brilliant. And if they know exactly what to do, then we'll also help them in specific areas that they might need help as well. But what we are finding is, I think people are realising that, the player development programme is it's all about developing away from the football and hurling field. And I also think our players realise as well, is that if you're right in this side, you're also right in your sporting side as well, and you'll see an increase in performance and things like that as well. So, I suppose the challenge for us is obviously, we'd love to get all 2,200 players to engage, and that's the challenge, is to get that message out, exactly what we do, and we're working on that, and I think we have improved on that, but there's also a lot more improvement to do, but we'll continue to endeavour to do that, and I think another challenge is, I suppose, is the understanding as well in the wider GAA public as to what the GPA is all about. I think initially they'll think it's about striking and turning, professional, and that we're just here to make noise and to take money and to get money, and it's not that, it's changing.
So what do you say to people who have those ideas or those notions around what the GPA is? What is?
Well, I suppose the thing is to look, go on our website, see what we do, see our player testimonials, see how, what income that we get from the GAA, where it exactly goes. It goes directly to the players, and I would just ask them to understand first before they make that comment, and if they have any comments at all, I'd be happily would sit down with them and explain it to them. I think we have an unbelievable we've unbelievable games here, our national sport. We had All-Ireland finals, semi-finals over the last couple of months, and they've been fantastic. They've been national occasions, and the All-Ireland final was one of the most intense games. It was incredible, and everybody, those players left everything out on the field, which is what you'd ask for, as a manager, and what you want to do as a player. But we got to make sure that away from there, that in their own private lives, that they're also supported as well, because it takes a huge amount of effort to get where they are, and this side of it can be neglected. Sure. So we got to make sure that they don't neglect this side, because that won't last forever. And when it does go, that they're set up on the other side, and it makes that transition from playing to not playing that little bit easier.
Before I get going, I just want to say a big thank you to Dermot for his time and honesty on this podcast. As I listened back to the conversation, I couldn't help but notice how many small nuggets of information there was in there around resilience and overcoming the adversity that enters our lives in many different ways, shapes and forms sometimes. From injuries to men's health issues, as well as the bereavement of a close loved one, this will be a real talk that I will always remember. Also just want to say a big thank you to everyone who has listened in to any of the 14 episodes so far. To know that this podcast has been checked out over 41,000 times in more than 80 countries is unreal. And I promise that I will keep showing you a different side with some very recognisable GAA faces in the coming weeks. I hope any of you have listened to fascinating characters like Kevin McMenamin, Brendan Maher, Cora Staunton and Ushin McConville, talking about life lessons, leadership, resilience and so much more. I hope that you've learned as much as I have. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it online via Facebook or Twitter, or drop it into one of those annoying WhatsApp groups that you're probably in. Even better, if you're out for coffee or food with a friend, I'd love for you to use this podcast as a way to start a meaningful conversation in your own life about any of the topics that we've covered during these conversations. My name is Alan O'Mara, and thank you for listening to episode 14 of the Real Talks podcast with Dermot Earley.